It's 10 p.m. and you're scrolling Instagram, looking at a co-worker's baby announcement. Cute kid, tiny socks. To parents who already look like they haven't slept in 6 weeks. And somewhere in the back of your brain, a little voice starts doing math. You didn't ask it to do diapers. Daycare hospital bill. The car seat. Your friend just complained about costs more than her first car. You quietly close the app. You and your partner have been talking about it for 2 years now. And every conversation ends the same way. Not with a decision, but with a calculator. A long stare at the ceiling and a slow exhale. You're not broken, you're not selfish. You're not putting it off too long. You're just one of millions of Americans who finally sat down and ran the actual numbers on having a child in 2026, and the actual numbers are insane. My name is Nick, and today we're going to do the math that nobody wants to put on a baby shower invitation. So let's actually do it. Let's pull out the calculator. The world keeps telling you not to look at. The number that breaks everyone's brain right out of the gate. According to LendingTree's April 2026 report, the average cost of raising one child to age 18 in the United States is now $303,418. That's up almost 28% from their 2023 number. And that's the conservative estimate. Other models, they're just the USDA's outdated framework for current inflation. Put it closer to $414,000. Either way, you're looking at somewhere between $17,000 and $23,000 per year. Every year for 18 straight years. And that's before college. We'll get to college, you're not going to like college. Now compare that to what the average American household actually makes. Median household income in this country is $83,730. That's the Census Bureau's most recent number. And it's basically been flat since 2019 once you adjust for inflation. So we're asking the median American family to spend somewhere between 20% and 25% of their entire lifetime gross income on raising one child. Not net income, not after taxes. Gross before the IRS even shows up. If that ratio sounds like a math error to you, congratulations, you're paying attention. But people keep having kids. People keep saying it'll work out. People keep telling you that you'll never be financially ready. So just go for it. You know exactly which people I'm talking about. Your aunt at Thanksgiving, who raised for kids on a teacher's salary and still doesn't understand why you're waiting. Your coworker who keeps asking, so when are you guys having one? Like it's a polite question. The boomer relatives who genuinely believe you're being selfish. The TikTok mom with 6 kids, a homestead, a clothing line, and apparently no rent. Everyone has an opinion, almost nobody has a calculator. So let's run the math against the real math and see what falls out. Let's start before the baby even exists. Just having the kid, just the physical act of getting the human out of the body, costs an average of $20,416. If you have employer-based health insurance, according to the Peterson KFF Health System Tracker, your out-of-pocket share averages $2,743. That's if everything goes well. That's a routine delivery on a normal insurance plan. If you need a C-section, which roughly 1 in 3 American mothers does now, the gross cost jumps to almost $29,000. If you're uninsured, a vaginal birth runs about $15,000 and a C-section averages $26,000. And here's the part nobody warns you about. If anything goes sideways, and 18% of newborn admissions involve some NICU time. The average NICU stay costs $71,158. The high end can climb past $1 million. For premature babies, your insurance has an out-of-pocket maximum. Sure, in 2026, that cap is $10,600 for a family plan, which is great if you happen to have $10,600 sitting in a checking account. That isn't already earmarked for, eating and existing. So before the baby is old enough to focus its eyes, you've potentially handed over the equivalent of a used Toyota. And now we get to the really fun part. Welcome to parental leave in America. The United States is the only developed country without a national paid parental leave program. The federal law on the books, if MLA gives you 12 weeks of unpaid leave, unpaid is in $0, as in please go bond with your newborn. Well, we garnish your wages by 100%. And it only applies if you work for a company with 50 or more employees. Only about 27% of private sector workers have access to any paid family leave. The OECD average is 18.5 The American federal floor is 0. So if you take the full 12 unpaid weeks, the median full-time worker loses about $14,400 in wages on top of the hospital bill. Added up a normal birth on a good insurance plan with a responsible 12-week leave cost you roughly $17,000 before the kid has had its first solid food. But you just go for it. Now let's talk about year one. According to Baby Center's 2025 survey, the average first-year cost of a baby is now $20,384, up 29% from 2020 to formula runs about $220 a month. Diapers and wipes another $86. You'll go through about 1,500 diapers in year one. You will become an expert in poop logistics. Nobody warns you about this. There are no LinkedIn courses for it. There is no industry certification. You will just know suddenly and irreversibly exactly how much a Costco box of size 3 Pampers costs. But the diapers and the formula are the appetizer. The entree is the line item. The financial industry has been very quiet for the last 20 years, the one that breaks middle-class families clean in half. Child care. The national average cost of one child in center-based daycare $13,128 per year, according to Childcare Aware of America. It jumped $1,546 in a single year. It's up 35% since 2019, and that's the national average. Meaning it includes Mississippi, which is around $565 a month, and West Virginia and rural Kansas. If you live in or near any major American city, throw that average in the trash. In Boston, infant daycare runs $2,200 to $2,800 a month. In San Francisco, $2,800 and up. In Manhattan and Brooklyn, anywhere from $2,200 to $3,000, with some centers crossing for $1,000. In Washington, D.C., the average is $24,243 a year, more than in state tuition at the University of Maryland. In Seattle, infant care jumps 10% in a single year. And we're not talking about a luxury Montessori with goat yoga and toddler French. We're talking about the regular daycare down the street that washes its hands and reads picture books. Child care for one infant now costs more than in state college tuition. In 41 states plus the District of Columbia. Read that sentence again. We've built a system where it is more expensive to drop your 1-year-old off for the day than it is to send your 18-year-old to a 4-year public university. And then we tell young couples they should just figure it out. Care.com's 2026 Cost of Care report surveyed 3,000 parents. At the end of last year, the average American family is now spending 20% of their household income on child care. The Federal Department of Health and Human Services defines affordable child care as 7% of income. We are not at 7%, we are nearly 3 times that. 1 in 5 families is spending over $30,000 a year on 31% are pulling from savings. Not vacation savings, not the new car fund. The actual savings they were supposed to live on. If anything went wrong, but you're thinking, okay, those are averages, those are stats. What does this actually look like for real people? Let me introduce you to Jack and Emily. They're a couple in their early 30s living in Denver. Jack is a software project manager making $80,000 to $1,000. Emily is a nurse making $70,000 for $1,000. Combined household income $156,000. They are firmly upper middle class. They have a Trader Joe's membership and a Subaru. They've been doing everything right. They have one kid who's 14 months old. Here's their actual monthly math. Gross income about $13,000 a month, after taxes, healthcare premiums, and for 401k contributions. They take home roughly $9,400. Their two-bedroom apartment in a half-decent school district $1,000 for $100. Daycare for one toddler at the closest center with availability $1,950. Groceries for a family. That includes one tiny person who only eats 6 foods, $750. To car payments, because Denver is not walkable, $700. Car insurance and gas for $100. Health insurance premium share already taken from paychecks, but the deductible isn't met yet. So co-pays and prescriptions $300. Student loans because they both have degrees. Conservatively $500 utilities. Internet phones for $100. their share of the kid's health insurance, the baby Tylenol, the Pedialyte, the random pediatrician co-pays $200. Added up, their fixed monthly costs are $7,600. They have $1,800 left for everything else in their lives' clothing. Date nights, birthday gifts, the diapers and wipes that aren't covered above, the toddler shoes that get outgrown every 8 weeks, any unexpected expense whatsoever. Jack and Emily are saving roughly $200 a month. Right now, they make $156,000 a year. They are above the median in every category that matters, and they have less margin in their budget than their parents had on one income. In 1985, here's what that life feels like day to day. It feels like checking your bank account before every grocery run. It feels like the daycare director sending an email about a $30 art supplies fee, and you genuinely don't know if you can swing at this paycheck. It feels like 2 o'clock a.m. the baby has been screaming for 40 minutes, and instead of just calling urgent care, you're calculating in your head whether the copay is worth it, or whether you can probably wait until morning. It feels like declining your sister's destination wedding because the math doesn't math. It feels like being one car repair away from a credit card balance you'll carry for 3 years. This is what we now call having a kid in 2026. This is what we tell young couples is normal. Quick aside, because I get this question a lot. If you've ever watched a video like this and thought, I could make something like this, you actually can. I run a small community on School, where I teach people how to build faceless YouTube channels. From scratch scripting voiceover, the research process, the editing, the part where you stop second-guessing yourself and actually publish. It's where I share the stuff that doesn't fit in a 20-minute video. If that sounds like your thing, the link's in the description. If not, no worries. The rest of the math is still free. So you might be thinking, okay, fine. One of us just stays home. Problem solved. And this is where the trap really tightens, because that's exactly the calculation millions of families are now making, according to Bankrate's 2025 analysis of census data. Full-time working mothers earn 35% less than full-time working fathers. In 2024, that's not the general gender pay gap. That's specifically the motherhood penalty, and it's actually widening. It was 31% in 2023. A study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, using administrative wage data, found that women's earnings get cut roughly in half after the first child and stay depressed for years, not weeks, years. And so when one parent is statistically almost always the mother, leaves the workforce to dodge the daycare bill, she isn't just losing 1 year of income. She's losing her career trajectory, her retirement contributions, her Social Security base, minus 1 year of lost compounding and a resumed gap. Hiring managers will quietly hold against her. This is what economists call the to-income trap. Elizabeth Warren wrote a whole book about it 20 years ago, and we collectively decided not to listen. A modern-to-earner family has less discretionary income than a one-earner family did in 1970. Because all the fixed costs, housing, healthcare, education, childcare have inflated to absorb the second income. You're not getting ahead with the paychecks. You're running fast enough to stay in place. Okay, I know this is a lot. Stay with me because we're about to leave the math and start talking about the part that actually breaks people. You've made it. You've survived year 1. You've paid the hospital. You've gotten through the daycare years. Your kid is in public school, which is free. Finally, something is free. Thank God you can relax right. Yeah, about that healthcare. The Kaiser Family Foundation's 2025 Employer Health Benefits Survey found that the average family premium on employer insurance is now $26,993 a year, up 6% in 1 year. The worker share averages $6,850, up 26% over 5 years. Adding 1 child to your plan typically moves you from single coverage to family coverage, which is a jump of $5,000 to $15,000 a year. And that's just the premium. That doesn't include the deductible, which now averages $1,886 even on the cheapest plans. On what the copays or the prescriptions are. Or the fact that pediatricians have decided, well, child visits should happen approximately every 6 minutes for the first 3 years, and that's for a healthy kid. Add an ear infection, a broken arm. Some braces may be therapy, and the numbers compound in ways nobody puts in the baby books. Then there's housing, because as your kid grows, your housing situation changes whether you want it to or not. Suddenly the studio apartment is illegal. The two-bedroom is tight. You start checking school districts. And the good ones come with property tax premiums. And home prices 10 to 20% above the comparable house 3 miles away. And a worse zip code in high-cost metros. The gap between a two-bedroom and a three-bedroom can run $12,000 to $18,000 a year. You're not just adding a kid. You're moving, you're upgrading. You're paying the school district tax. Everything gets bigger and more expensive, including the car. The minivan exists for a reason, and that reason is depressing. And we still haven't talked about college. Your kid is going in 2044. College costs have historically grown about 5 to 5.5% a year. Which means by the time your newborn is 18, and state public is projected to run around $60,000 to $1,000 a year. Private universities could exceed $144,000 a year. A four-year private degree could cost somewhere north of $575,000 for one degree for one kid. If you want to fully fund an in-state public degree without your kid taking on debt, you need to be putting about $300 a month into a 5 to 9 plan starting the month they're born. For private, it's closer to $700 a month. That's just for college. That's not retirement. That's not your emergency fund. That's not the down payment on the house. In a school district you can't quite afford. So let's stop and look at the whole picture. The honest floor on raising one child to 18 in a major American metro. All in is somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 before college. That's if nothing goes wrong. Nobody gets sick, nobody needs braces. Nobody breaks anything expensive. That's the easy version to pull that off without going into debt. Financial planners generally recommend a household income of $150,000 to $200,000 minimum. In high-cost metros, the floor jumps to $250,000 or higher. The Citizens Committee for Children of New York calculated a family needs to earn over $300,000 a year to keep infant child care under the 7% affordability threshold in NYC. So who can actually afford a kid in 2026? Roughly the top 20% of American households. Maybe the top 30% if you're in a low-cost state. Both parents work, you have family help, and nothing breaks. Everyone else is doing some version of the same thing, stretching, sacrificing going into debt, relying on grandparents, or quietly deciding not to have kids at all. Which brings us to the only statistic in this video that should genuinely scare you. The U.S. general fertility rate fell to 53.1 births per 1,000 women. In 2025, that's an all-time low in CDC data going back to 1909. We are now having fewer babies per capita than during the Great Depression or during World War II. Pew Research surveyed adults under 50 without kids and found that 36% cite the cost of raising a child as a major reason. They don't plan to have any. The most recent American Family Survey from Brigham Young University, 70% of Americans say raising children is too expensive. A 13-point jump in a single year. The biggest single-year jump that survey has ever recorded. This isn't a vibe. This isn't a generational complaint. This is millions of Americans running the numbers and concluding the math doesn't work. And then we wonder why the birth rate is collapsing. Now the government has noticed. Sort of. The child tax credit got bumped from $2,000 to $2,200 per child. In 2025, the dependent care FSA limit is going up from $5,000 to $7,500 in 2026. The first real change since 1986 when Top Gun was in theaters. Gas was 89 cents, and you could buy a house for 2 times your salary. There's a new Trump account that gives newborns a one-time $1,000 federal contribution invested in an index fund. By the time the kid hits 18, that's about $3,800. Congratulations. That's a security deposit on an apartment we'll never be able to afford. Meanwhile, every other country on Earth was quietly figuring this out. Well, we weren't looking in France. Parents get up to 16 weeks of paid maternity leave, plus subsidized childcare that often costs under $500 a month. In Denmark, the government covers about 75% of child care costs and guarantees a spot for every child over 6 months old. The OECD average government spending on child care is about $14,000 per child. Per year, the U.S. spends about $500. That's not a typo. We spend roughly 3% of what our peer countries spend on the single most expensive line item of modern parenthood. And then we publish op-eds wondering why Americans aren't having kids. So let me give you permission to do something the entire economy is built to prevent you from doing. You are allowed to look at this math and decide. It doesn't work for you. You are allowed to have 1 kid instead of 3. You are allowed to wait until you're 35 or 38 or 40. You are allowed to be honest with yourself about what your income can actually support without turning your marriage into a 24/7 stress simulator. You are allowed to look at the numbers and say, not yet or even not at all. And you are not less of a person for it. The ethical worker, the TikTok mom, none of them are in your spreadsheet. None of them are signing your daycare check. Their opinions are interesting. Their opinions are also irrelevant. If you do want kids and the math works, beautiful. Have them love them. They're worth it, but run the actual numbers first. Stress test your insurance. Find out what daycare in your zip code actually costs by Tuesday. Build the emergency fund before you build the nursery. Open the 5-9 the week they're born, claim every credit and account you can find. It won't be enough, but it'll matter. And if the math doesn't work, then please, for the love of God, do not let anyone shame you into doing it anyway. There is no trophy for having a child you can't afford to raise without imploding. The smartest financial decision a lot of Americans right now is the one nobody on Instagram is posting about. The decision to wait, the decision to have 1 instead of 3. The math is screaming most people aren't listening. You don't have to be most people.